All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to, I guess we'll call this our first revived all Jupyter community video call. Thank you to everyone who is here. We're going to definitely test the bandwidth of Zoom. We already talked about that. So we'll see how this turns out with everybody on the call. So a couple of things I want to point out before we get started. So I should introduce myself. My name is Zach Saylor. I'm a core developer for Jupyter at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, California. There's a few of us on this call from that area. And so we just last month discussed trying to revive this call. We've been doing these for a long time. And they kind of like slowly dwindled in traffic because I think the calls became a little bit too technical focused, more focused at the core developers and less about the community. And so what we really wanted to do is create an opportunity, and this is a little bit speaking from my own opinion. You know, there's much discussion to be had about this, but I think the idea was to open up an avenue for people from the community to jump in and share the things that they're excited about inside the Jupyter ecosystem. And so anyone can hop on this call, anyone can share anything on this call. You just add yourself to the list, and we'll give you some minutes to talk about what you're excited about. I think today we're maybe a little bit core developer heavy because this is the first one, so we're just trying to test it out. But really, this is open to anyone. So thank you to everyone who's here so far. One other thing I want to point you to is we're going to try this out. So Jupyter has a team meeting in person every year, and what we found to work really well this year was we did this thing like a speaking queue, which was when someone is speaking, if you have something you want to say on that topic currently, in person we raised our hand and somebody added you to a queue, and then we just went through that queue in order. And so there was no interrupting, crosstalk happened in a structured format. So to do that for this phone call, if you guys can all go to the speaking queue, or sorry, the HackPad or HackMD agenda, we have a list or a section in there called the speaking queue with a little checkbox section where you can add your name and only on the current topic that we're talking about right now. And we'll try to get through everyone on that. We'll time box it a little bit if that list gets too long. We may just have to cut it off and move to the next topic. But at least we'll go in order of who adds their name there first. And then that speaking queue will be refreshed on the next topic. So if we can't get through everyone, just for time's sake, we'll move to the next topic and we'll clear the names there and do it for the next one. That makes sense to everybody? Thumbs up? Perfect. Great, great. Okay, so with that, I talked a little bit about the purpose of the call and a little bit about the history. So we broke our agenda down into these two sections. One is kind of a short reports, which doesn't really have discussion. I'll just, if the people are on the call, I'll let them read out that point if they would like. Otherwise, I can just read through the section, just give these shout outs, and then we'll move into the longer agenda items. We're going to shoot for this call to be about an hour. If we start getting close to that time limit, then I will kind of shorten the discussion on each topic. And then I'll ask people if the people at the end of the agenda, if we can bump them to next month's call. Cool. All right, so let's go with we'll go through the short reports and celebrations and shout outs. Peter, you have the first point on the list?
Sure. Shout out to Damian Avila for creating a community Docker stack, an education notebook Docker image, which starts from the data science notebook image in the Jupyter Docker stacks and adds in things like Rise and MB Grader. So shout out to him for bootstrapping that.
Awesome. And then Carol put down here, I don't see her on the call. There's a lot of people to look at here. Okay.
It's listed on the, she said she couldn't come. Her name is missing.
Perfect, thank you. So she said thank you to Tony Hurst for the weekly newsletter, the Tracking Jupyter newsletter. Definitely check that out. And then I mentioned this already, but we had our all Jupyter team meeting in Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago, and that was hosted by Lorena Barba at George Washington University. It was awesome. She was great. So huge thank you from the team to her. Those meetings are so critical for us to at least get together once a year in person, all of us, to discuss kind of future directions for Jupyter. And then Peter. Oh, that's, yeah, so thanks, Peter.
Kind of meta, but shout out to Zach and everyone else that had a hand in revitalizing this. I see Matthias and Tim and Chris on the Discourse. I'm sure there are other people behind the scenes, but I'm glad these are back. So shout out to y'all.
Thanks, Peter. So yeah, so this is definitely going to be a work in progress, and hopefully we can iterate on this and find out what works best for the team. But the idea there is that, yeah, this was an avenue for the community to get engaged with the core team and other community members. And so if you have feedback about this call at the end, please just share it with us. There is a link in the HackMD under that short report section with a link to the Discourse post that I opened up about a month ago talking about this. So engage in conversation in there, give us feedback. If there's anything you think we could do better, let us know, or anything you'd like to see added to these calls, let's chat about it there. That'd be awesome. Yeah, and I think a general point, the Jupyter Discourse is becoming kind of our new way to engage in conversation kind of across Jupyter projects. And so we really found that we struggle to have a single landing place for users to go to discuss topics. In Jupyter, you have to find yourself going between multiple different repos at a time. And so the Discourse really provides a nice single home for you to scan certain topics, be able to search history and conversations that have happened in the past. So yeah, so get on Jupyter Discourse if you haven't already. And I think there's a post still open to introduce yourself. So introduce yourself there too. You'll get a lot of hearts and discourse from people. All right. That brings us, anybody have any shout outs they want to say that they haven't listed there yet? Yeah, Matthias?
Just for Discourse, I realized by showing that to someone that if you have an ad blocker, when you try to log in the first time, if you've never logged in, you will not get the login with GitHub and login with Google buttons. So it will basically ask you to create an account. So don't forget to turn off your ad blocker and refresh the page to get these two buttons, and then it's going to link your account with either Google or GitHub.
Perfect. Thank you, Matthias. All right. Anybody else have anything they want to share? Perfect. That's to our main agenda items. So we'll start off with Peter talking about Docker Stack.
Sure.
And actually, sorry, Peter, before you start, I should say our thoughts were what you could do with this time, if you are on the agenda, and Peter will probably do this too, is use this time to share your screen if you would like, and actually walk through demos of something that you're announcing. You don't necessarily have to do that, but that tends to be what we had in mind was really give people an opportunity to see this. This is kind of like a pseudo JupyterCon every week, where you get to demo the things that you're excited about. So, all right, take it away, Peter. Thanks.
No pressure, virtual JupyterCon. So one thing I wanted to share was Jupyter Docker stacks are just a set of pre-built Docker images where we install Notebook and Lab and Jupyter components, among other things. We still have a lot of people that use them, even though repo to Docker and Binder and other things have come along since then. But one of the problems we've always run into is these are sort of mega images with lots of different packages in them, and versioning them in a way that users understand what's in them has been challenging. Right now, we just put a bit of the Git commit on the end of the image, and then have been telling users, we'll come back to the repo and see what the state of the Docker files or the requirements and so on and so forth were. We started to automate a bit more of this to capture what I've been calling build manifests for images. When the images build on Docker Hub, post-build, there is information pushed back to the wiki here on GitHub. So for each image, you can see the tag, you can see the name of the image, and then we're capturing things like, well, the git diff is just the pull request typically that caused a change, the state of the Docker file at the point that build was made. But then more importantly, we have this build manifest concept where, again, you could see some of the information about the git commit and the SHA and so forth, but we're actually querying at build time or post build time the state of Julia, for example, in the image, the contents and versions of the Julia packages, the Python packages, Conda, the Conda list, and so on and so forth. R is down here at the bottom, R packages in the data science notebook, and then even apt because they're Ubuntu-based images. So we sort of have this full manifest of what's in that Docker image before people go pull it down. We can also think about building tooling to diff these if something breaks from one image to the next. But it's really meant to be a form of like automated documentation to really capture what's in these, you know, many gigabyte Docker images that people still seem to love, even though they're huge. So just wanted to call that out. Maybe just a moment on how this is automated. If you've used Docker Hub, Docker Cloud before, you get the idea, or there's the concept of a post and pre and so forth build hooks that are in a hooks folder. We're simply running a bash script here and templating out you know, what these manifests should look like in bash, for better or worse. There might be a nicer way to do this. This was the first cut. Just running Docker, you know, Julia, using interactive utils to get the version info, for example. Same thing for package status, same thing for Python and Conda and R. And you can think about extending these to capture more information about what's in the images, like Docker history might be a good one to add to the pages. So just wanted to share that in case it's useful to anyone and point out to users, you know, now there's a way to see what's in these massive images without Docker pulling them. That's all I got.
Awesome. That was great, Peter. Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Peter?
I got off easy. Thanks. Next up.
It was just such a good demo. Thank you. All right, so next we'll move to the second item. This is from Tim, talking about mybinder.org.
Okay, so my name is Tim. I'm one of the project leads on Binder, and we operate a website called mybinder.org. And I thought I'd talk briefly about how you actually use it, what it does, and some pointers towards more documentation that you can read, more examples you can look at, and places you can get help if you want to use it. And so if you are a long-time follower of Binder and you have really in-depth questions and you were hoping for me to reveal all my secret knowledge, then you came to the wrong meeting. You'll have to come to a different one at a later point. Okay, so mybinder.org, if you surf there in your browser, it looks something like this. And it tells you what it will do in the tagline. It will turn a Git repository into a collection of interactive notebooks. So the first thing you need is a Git repository. And I've made one over here. Actually, as a question, can you guys see like the little windows of yourself on my screen share? No, good. Then you didn't see me try to move them out of the way. So I made a repository called My First Binder, and it doesn't contain very much. It just contains a README, a hello.py, and a requirements.txt. Because even a empty Git repository is a valid repository that mybinder.org will build for you and launch. But that's not very exciting. So most people actually want to install some kind of software or libraries before they want to execute their notebooks or their code. And one way of doing that, if you're using Python, is to create a requirements.txt file, and then you list on one line, line per line the libraries you want to install. So in this case, for example, you want to install NumPy. We list that here, and then we take the URL to that GitHub repository, and we paste it at the top here where it says GitHub repository name or URL. You can also, if you don't want to use GitHub, you can use a gist or a repository hosted on GitLab, or even any kind of Git repository which is like accessible to the public on the internet. And then you can specify which branch or tag or specific commit you want to launch. And if you don't put anything, we will pick master. And there's a few more other additional options that you can investigate at a later point. The most important button is the big orange one, which if you click it, will start the build process. And what will happen if the demo gods are good, then you see in this terminal window down here, all sorts of text scrolling by. And this is telling you what we're doing, building the Docker image that we're about to launch for you while you're waiting. So if you analyze, take some time to read this, you will see that we're installing Miniconda, then we're noticing that you have a requirements.txt in your repository, and then executing pip install on that. And then very quickly, we get to the end where we're pushing the image to our Docker registry. And then now it's saying launching the server for you. And any moment now, you will be redirected to a notebook interface. And then you have your own running instance of a Jupyter Notebook server, and you can do whatever you want to do there. And if your repository is more exciting than mine, it'll have notebooks in it that you want to execute and things like that. So okay, now I will not wait for this to launch. I will come back to it later. One thing that you might want to look at is lots of other examples that we have on how you can prepare your repository so that mybinder.org recognizes its content. Because there's some files like requirements.txt, which if you're a Python person, you already know and love for specifying your dependencies, but we also support Julia and R, and for them, there's different ways of specifying the dependencies. And because it's a Ubuntu image in the Docker image that we build on, you can even install Ubuntu packages and things like this. So how to do that, if you're interested in using R and RStudio on Binder, check out the small R repository on Binder examples. We have examples for Conda, requirements.txt, Julia demos. The list goes on. There's like too many examples for me to remember. One thing I like to, one stereotype I'd like to get out of the world is that MyBinder only works with notebooks, because not only can you use RStudio, which is not Jupyter Notebooks, you can also launch things which have nothing to do with notebooks whatsoever. So I built a little demo repo where if we launch it and maybe have a little bit more luck, you can start VS Code and all you see is VS Code. So, you've left notebooks behind well and truly. So one thing, unfortunately, that happens to you when you're giving demos about this is that it takes a few seconds for your binder to launch. And there's unfortunately not so much we can do about that. So yeah, if you click here VS Code, you'd get a VS Code editor. How do I make, okay, fine, I have to look at the chat. And if you want to look at more documentation for the tool that we use to build these Docker images on the fly for you, it's called Repo to Docker. And it has its own web page. You can use it on your own computer. And and it is what mybinder.org defers to for building the images. So I think that was a very short whistle-stop tour of all the things you can do in Binder. And I will have a look at the questions that there are and then answer them. Is it true that you personally are the only user of the Open with Binder? Yes. So if you are eagle-eyed, you can see I have a little Binder logo in my like browser tab bar, and that's a browser extension for Chrome and Firefox. And if you click it while you're on some kind of page that mybinder.org can launch, if you just click that, we will launch it for you. And it's super convenient because eventually you get bored of copying and pasting links. You should check it out. I really like it. If you're running an event, so we run something like between 300 to 500 concurrent Docker image or Docker instances during the period of the day. So that's the kind of scale of concurrent users on mybinder.org. We limit every individual repo to at most 100 concurrent instances. So if you have a course with 200 people who are all going to launch it simultaneously, we would appreciate if you come and talk to us before. Groups of 50 people is, I think people do that all the time, and we rarely notice that they're doing that. We'd love to figure out a funding model for Binder. Who said that? Yeah, we'd love to as well. Hi, I'm Matthias. Yeah, so one question that comes up often is who's paying for mybinder.org currently, because it costs a lot of money in terms of cloud compute. And currently it's funded by sponsorship from Google Cloud. And how to turn that into a 10-year commitment is something we're still working on. And with that, my 10 minutes are over. So I will pass on to the next one. And yeah, if you want to ask questions, stop by the Discourse forum. We have a what do we call it? Category where people can ask questions and people will come and help you. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. And it looks like Chris even posted in there, one of the reasons why this demo was going so slow was because Binder just got slammed with some traffic from somebody teaching a course. So anybody have questions they want to say out loud? I'll give you 15 seconds to jump in. All right. Thank you so much, Tim. Really appreciate you running us through that demo.
Thanks for listening.
Okay, next on the list, Satya from the Interact team.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and start my screen share, and then we'll get the ball rolling.
Thank you.
All right, can everyone see my screen? Okay, fantastic. Yeah. So I just wanted to go through a quick laundry list of things and happenings on within the Interact project that are going to be going on within the next month or so. So the first thing that I wanted to share is that version 1.0 of Papermill is going to be released in early April. For those of you who might not be familiar, Papermill is a tool that allows you to parameterize and execute notebooks. Thanks so much to Matt Seal and Carol Willing for the hard work they put into both developing the code for this and also setting up the documentation, writing tests, all of that good stuff. So version 1.0 release coming up super soon. The next thing I wanted to announce in line with the 1.0 release of Papermill is an update to a tool that sits alongside Papermill called Scrapbook, which basically allows you to kind of pick up scraps from a notebook, and these scraps are generated data values or visualizations, and arrange them into a scrapbook, which is just place them into another notebook, or gather outputs from multiple notebooks into one collection. Scrapbooking, but for Jupyter notebooks. Very fun. The interesting development here is that alongside the same 1.0 release of Papermill, Scrapbook will also be releasing support for publishing your scraps to the cloud. So this is on S3, Google Cloud Storage, as well as Azure's storage services. So all of the outputs and data values that you can plug out of notebooks, you can now store in the cloud as opposed to your local machine. So that's a cool development on the Papermill and Scrapbook front. The other announcement I wanted to make is a tool that we've been working on called the Kernel Relay. The Kernel Relay is essentially a GraphQL service for interfacing with one or more Jupyter kernels. I'm in the GitHub repo for the Kernel Relay right now, which is just Interact Kernel Relay. Here's the architecture diagram for those of you who are interested in looking at it while I'm speaking. We just laid out a plan for version 1.0 of Kernel Relay and some of the work that will need to go on to ship the first release. It's currently under a project within this GitHub repository. If you're interested in this architecture or building a solution like this, you're definitely welcome to contribute and help us out working towards a 1.0 release of this. The other development going on is with respect to the Data Explorer. I think I'm going to have to move the window of faces that is blocking this. All right. Sorry, I had to move the little visual of everyone on the meeting to access these buttons over here. So this is the Data Explorer. For those of you who are unfamiliar, the Data Explorer is an interactive output within Interact that allows you to render data that is presented in a JSON table schema format in a set of automatic visualizations. It's designed to kind of bridge the gap between you've got this new data set that you want to play with and you want to just kind of tinker around with different visualizations before getting to the final visualization that you're hoping to create. So this is the tool and a sample data set over here. You can see all of the options that are provided. One of the big efforts that is underway is to modularize this tool, so to make it easier for individuals to swap out the grid that they might use to render tabular data, some of the different visualizations and plots, and all of the configurations that are available. The end goal is that this is going to be a much more flexible and dynamic tool for all of the different use cases that exist with the Data Explorer. So if you're interested in helping out with that effort, we have a Data Explorer tag within our GitHub repository, which is just Interact. And you can explore some of the issues, join the conversation, contribute, or just kind of watch and see what we're working on. And then the last update I wanted to give is that Interact is participating in Google Summer of Code as a NumFocus sponsored project. Google Summer of Code is a summer-long program where students can participate and contribute to open source. They can receive mentorship from open source maintainers and contributors, and they can help build, software engineering skill set or just a development skill set. Interact is participating this summer, so if you know any university students who you think would be a good fit for this program, definitely have them apply. I will be mentoring, and I think I'm generally a pretty cool mentor, so there's that. There's also other NumFocus projects participating if you worry what I might do to the children. There's other projects they can participate in. But yeah, Interact will be participating. Looking forward to working with some brilliant students this summer. Feel free to send this link out to anyone you know who might be interested or who might not be, but you think this would be a great opportunity for. Yeah, that is all for me. I know there's some other stuff that needs to be presented, so I'll jump to questions and then hop into the next person. If I can.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Safia.
Yeah.
Any questions?
If I wanted to talk more in depth about this work, is there a different meeting I could come to?
If you want to talk to more in depth about some of the things that were mentioned here, the best place would probably be the Interact Slack, where we have kind of informal conversations. We also have a weekly planning meeting that we do on Mondays. It was previously on Monday mornings, but we're now shifting it to Monday afternoons. But generally, we have a weekly meeting on Mondays that you can find out about by going to our Slack channel or Slack team, and we have a weekly meetings channel where you can join the meetings and stuff like that.
Sweet, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Other questions? If you feel awkward about asking a question on a recorded stream, definitely feel free to join the Interact Slack and either post a question there or direct message me, and I'd be happy to answer it as well.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, I'm gonna stop my share now and hand it over to the next person. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you for coming. Thanks for presenting. That was awesome.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. We're going to go to, it looks like next on the list is Nick, deathbed stuff.
Hi. Yeah, I haven't used this on this operating system before. Where's the share screen? Share screen's big and green. I have lots of desktops. Come on, desktop, share screen. Can you see my stuff?
Yes.
All right. This is Deathbeds. This is a thing that Tony Fast and I do for fun. We just have a lot of stuff in here. There's almost 100 notebooks in Deathbed's GitHub IO if you're really bored. That's probably the most dangerous Conda environment to create ever. Takes a long time. I'm going to talk about two little projects today we've been kicking around. This one's called Lintotype. Lintotype lets you take tools that are built for Python source and use them for the contents of your notebook. So a while ago, we got access to cell IDs when you actually do execution, and that opened up a whole new world of things. So we're going to use it right now. This one has wired up, what does it have wired up? It's got Black, Flake8, MyPy, PyFlakes, Pylint, and PyReverse. And what it does is when you actually get to something, as you can see here, those tools are pretty slow initially, but then you actually get your linting in here. So it's actually evaluating all the cells at once, because you have to do that for a lot of these annotation tools. So even though this line right here had already been linted, we're seeing here that you can't add a string times I don't know, something or another. But I think if you switch it around, it works fine. So right now it does this stuff. It is interactive, which means that I can pop into one and generate a bunch of options that I can configure and see different things about my application. So while I'm working on it, I can turn stuff off if I don't want to see things working. If I do not care to be schooled by the cruel mistress that is the linter. So it goes. I'm going to turn those back on, and one of the funny ones that we did is a class diagram thing. So this uses something built into Pylint. So if I have class A, and it doesn't like the newfangled stuff, and I got class B, which subclass is A, and you know, so oh look, there's a little button over here. If I hit class diagram, there's A to B. This is also looking across the whole shoot and match. So if I was to do class C, it extends B, get that again, and it would update that. So that's pretty fun. It's it's not fully aware of types like some of the other tools are, but it's still pretty good. So that's Lintotype. The other one is WXYZ. This is, for those of you that have been watching at home, this is a reboot of a lot of stuff that I've had done a long time ago, Dangerous Playgrounds. Peter threw some stuff at that and some other things. So this one is combines a few things. So all these widgets, I don't have it fully wired up yet, but all these are isomorphic in that they are implemented in both Python and JavaScript. So they could be implemented in other backend languages as well. So this little particular one lets us do some templating with Jinja, which is also implemented in Nunjux. And so we can look across some stuff here. And we're actually looking at the data, the template, the output, some widgets on it, all in the same thing here. So it's pretty fun. It'll be good when it works, when I actually have an example of it working outside of there. In addition to templates, we brought in the whole JSON stack. So we got JSON document, JSON schema, and JSON pointer. They're super cool. So I can ask for everything that's in there, or I can ask for just the, and I get nice errors in there. I never actually know whether the errors are coming from Python or JavaScript because it's all full of race conditions. But these are great because you can use standards to implement kind of fun little reactive things. It's also JSON LD aware, so it can do expansion, compaction, flattening, RDF stuff. I'm not going to monkey with this too much because RDF is a deep beast. So as you've been seeing in here, these things already have a layout. This is all based on the Phosphor data grid, or on the Phosphor data grid's coming. Phosphor doc panel. And so these are very strange things that when you start putting these things on the data model of the doc panel, you can start doing really weird stuff. So this is kind of the beginning of some more interactive dashboarding work that we want to see happen. These also can escape from the editor. I'm in single. Wow, that's a slider. Holy moly! Yeah. So you can actually start pulling your pieces of stuff off of where they used to live and draw them outside of it. If you really don't like that, then you can just go ahead and pop stuff right into the doc. Just make some more sliders. Really like sliders. All those things as well. If you, oh, it looks a lot better in dark theme. So this lets you just full screen some stuff. Everybody likes that. And that also happens to work on the doc panel. So you can pop into one of those. Takes a sec for it to redraw, but it's still kind of cute. You can play around with things like how much outlay how much border it has, things like that. And so pop out of there. And the last one is an oldie but a goodie. So this lets you load up an SVG and use the SVG as the background for a bunch of other widgets. So you say, hey, I got an SVG. I want to see it in a box. And that's described by a thing that I built over in Inkscape. And so these are just really nasty test issues for that. I think that's about all I got. Both these are all up on GitHub, and they have binders, and they work. Black doesn't work right now, so I'm working on it. That is all. Questions? Someone's typing. The SVG messed with my eyes. Yeah, I know. And I was moving it really fast. Yeah, it's just because of black and white. I needed to test stuff on light and dark, and I know things are broken. But yeah, there you go. I'm also working on a slider widget, so starting to replace the built-in stuff that's made out of HTML DOM, so that you can make, like, you know, games, something like that. That is all.
Thank you, Nick. Does anybody have any comments, questions for Nick?
Could you just send the link, please?
It's in the notes.
Thank you.
Find it. Yeah, they're just right off of there. Yeah.
I had a question about something you alluded to earlier in the demo.
Yep.
You mentioned briefly that you had access to cell IDs. Could you elaborate into what you meant by that?
Sure. So IPython doesn't currently use them, so I had to hook way deeper in there, but the message spec does permit you to also emit a client level, completely opaque, unparsable, whatever ID of the cell that executed it. So this is super important for typed languages and stuff like that, where you're trying to build a consensus document. It's not a stream of things, like the whole document has to be looked at once. It's in the metadata on an execute request, and you just got to go hunt around for it and find it. And then if you're implementing a front end, you got to provide it. But it has no meaning to the kernel unless you decide to make it have meaning.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for sharing how you implemented that. Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question? Can you guys hear me?
Hey, Chris.
Hey.
I can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me?
I've turned you all the way up, so speak very clearly.
Okay, sorry, I'm in a loud coffee shop, so I'll keep it quick. I'm just wondering, what is, like, the tools that you just showed off, are these meant to be like extensions for Jupyter Lab, or are they like future features of Jupyter Lab? Or I'm just kind of curious, what's the relationship between the specific things you mentioned and like the kind of core project?
Well, I mean, I don't start new notebook widgets, so they're just widgets. And they're just built on top of things that are already in Lab. So CodeMirror is in Lab, Phosphor is in Lab. So yeah, I'd like them to, at some point, they would, I mean, the widgets aren't going to merge into Lab, but, you know, they could go into Core. Those ones could go into Core.
Thanks.
All right, if there are no more questions, we'll go to our next one. Thank you, Nick. That was great. Matthias, it looks like the last two items come from you.
Okay, well, thank you. I have plenty of time. I was trying to be fast because I thought that we will be like longer. So one of the things we discussed 2 weeks ago at the meeting, that was more previsibility of when the releases are being done and so on and so forth. And so I'm going to try to do monthly release of IPython, which I've been trying to do for quite some time. So now basically I open issues to say, well, this new version is going to be released around this date. And you can subscribe to these issues that are pinned on the top of GitHub repository. So I just released 7.4, or not me, I helped someone release 7.4 a couple of days ago. So now you can test 7.4. And if you want to start to help with 7.5, you can subscribe to the 7.5 issue. There are a lot of small tasks when the actual release is done to update a lot of things like Conda Forge or like Wikipedia with a new version that you can help with. Otherwise, the development of IPython has slowed down a bit because we don't have many people contributing, and I have way less time than before. So don't expect as many new features as before. And that's about it for IPython. Not much have changed. The second thing I want to talk about is async kernel starting. I think that might be interesting for Safia, who spoke previously about the GraphQL thing. So one of the things that most of the implementation of Jupyter suppose is that kernel starting is relatively fast, which is not always the case. And there have been some work from IBM where basically you want to spawn a kernel in the cloud because you suddenly want to do a lot of computation. And so a lot of the core of Jupyter in many projects need to be refactored to basically use async and await, which is brand new since Python 3.5 and 3.6. So basically, while you're waiting for a kernel to start, your different processes can do other stuff without having to use thread and everything. It's quite a complex problem. It would be interesting, for example, for HPC system. So far, when you use HPC system, you basically need to start a full notebook on the compute node to do something. And we would like to move to, for example, having the server at some place and then having the compute away on some other machine. I think we have some people like Luciano on the call who are working on kernel gateway and enterprise gateway to do some of this stuff. And so I think it affects a lot of the projects. And if you have any interest of that, or if you implement things with a protocol, or if you think that is one of the use cases that you would like to see or just are interested in async and await, I would love to have your feedback, or at least your input and your help to review some of the pull requests and the discussion. I linked to the main one here, which is on Jupyter client, pull request 428. Kevin sent the pull request, and I'm trying to review and fix bugs so far, trying to get the test to pass. And that's about it. There is there is a path forward that we want to move. It's going to take quite some time, and it's mostly to help people contribute. And I think that's about it for me.
Thanks, Matthias. Anybody have questions for Matthias? All right. Thanks, everybody. So that brings us to the end of our agenda. We actually are finishing early. So great job, everybody. Thank you to everyone who presented. And like I said, I want to, for those of you who weren't here maybe at the beginning of the call, I want to point everyone to the Discourse post that's actually open on this video call, about this video call. It's in the HackMD agenda. It's like the 5th item in the shorts report. It just says, leave your feedback on the all Jupyter community call. Go ahead and click on that link, leave your feedback, tell us what you'd like to see more of, maybe what you thought worked, didn't work, and we'll continue to iterate on this each month. And then in the meantime, one other thing is we are gonna try to have these monthly, and so it'll be great, one, just to connect and see everybody, but two, if you have something you wanna share in the next month, we're gonna try to open these agendas a month early, so add yourself to that list and try to do that 24 hours before the call, and then we'll help us organize these calls and set them up for that next call. So yeah, other than that, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording. If people wanna stay on and talk after the recording's done, that'd be totally fine. But other than that, thanks everybody. It was great to see everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, all. See ya.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Take care.